I never respected him. That is what Mick Harford once said about a rival who left him needing over 100 stitches. This is the story of the 6 footballers Mick Harford hated the most. Mick Harford was born in Sunderland in 1959. He became a centre-forward during the most violent era in English football history. The 1980s and early 1990s were not about skill or tactics. They were about pain. Harford played 482 matches and scored 186 goals, but his real record was written in blood and broken bones. He was one of the last true hard men of English football, a warrior who survived battles that would end careers today. Harford played most of his best years at Luton Town between 1984 and 1992. He was the perfect target man, strong in the air, good with the ball at his feet, and absolutely fearless. Other players described him as virtually unstoppable on his best days. No defender wanted to face him. Harford himself had a simple view of his style. He said he was not hard, he was just brave. He put his head in where other people did not. That bravery came with a price. He took punishment every single week, but he also gave it back. English football in the 1980s was brutal. Tactics were basic. Most teams played 4-4-2. Defenders were told to stop strikers by any means necessary. Referees let almost everything go. Fouls that would be red cards today were barely yellows back then. Players got kicked, stamped on, elbowed. It was normal. Fitness was better than in the 1970s, but still poor compared to now. Centre-forwards like Harford had to stand and fight in every match. The game was raw, physical, dangerous. If you were not tough enough, you were finished. Harford played during a strange time for football culture. The sport was recovering from hooliganism and the Heysel disaster in 1985. Football was trying to clean up its image before the Premier League started in 1992. But on the pitch, nothing had changed. The aggression was still there. Sometimes it even spilled off the pitch. When Harford played for Birmingham City, the team once arranged a fight in a Portsmouth pub after a match got too heated. That was the world Harford lived in. His reputation was legendary. When he joined Wimbledon in 1994, even the famous Crazy Gang left him alone. Vinnie Jones and his teammates were known for their brutal initiations. They cut up trousers. They let down tyres. They terrorised new players. But they did not touch Harford. He was the only player they never dared to mess with. That tells you everything about how feared he was. Now let us talk about the 6 players Harford hated facing. These were not just tough opponents. They were men who hurt him, men he wanted to hurt back, men who made every match feel like a war. Sam Allardyce, the centurion of stitches. Sam Allardyce and Mick Harford had a hatred that went beyond football. They had already clashed many times before the match that changed everything. On January 26, 1985, Luton Town played Huddersfield Town. Allardyce was a defender for Huddersfield. Harford was leading the line for Luton. The two men went at each other from the first whistle. Then it happened. Harford turned to run. The ball was nowhere near him. Allardyce came in from behind and smashed his elbow into Harford's face. It was deliberate, it was vicious, and it was devastating. Harford went down. His face was destroyed. Blood poured from his mouth. His lip was split open. When the medical staff reached him, they were horrified. A nurse later cried when she saw the damage. Harford needed more than 100 stitches. Some were inside his mouth. Some were on the outside of his face. He needed plastic surgery. A tooth was sticking out of his top lip. The hospital staff could not believe what football had done to him. But Harford was not done. He woke up in the hospital bed still wearing his full kit and boots. He was ready to go back. Later that day, he discharged himself from hospital. He refused to let the injury beat him. Years later, a journalist asked Harford if he ever got revenge on Allardyce. Harford smiled and gave a cryptic answer. He told the journalist to stop asking questions. The implication was clear. The score had been settled. In the world of 1980s football, you did not let something like that go unanswered. Harford lived by the code. If someone hurt you, you hurt them back. Tony Adams, the forearm target. Tony Adams was the captain of Arsenal, a legend, a rock at the back. He and Harford clashed many times during the 1980s. But these were not random battles. Harford had a plan. He had a signature move. and Adams felt it more than once. Adams later revealed what Harford used to do. He said Harford's favourite trick was to come from the side and smash opponents with his forearm. It was not a wild swing. It was calculated, precise, brutal. Harford would time his run perfectly. Then he would drive his forearm into the defender's face. Adams was one of his main targets. The damage was real. Adams said he had to have a nerve taken out of his teeth because Harford hit him so hard. Think about that. A professional footballer needed dental surgery because of one man's repeated attacks. This was not accidental. Harford knew exactly what he was doing. He was using his body as a weapon, and it worked. Adams might have been one of the greatest defenders in English football history, but even he could not stop Harford from hurting him. This was Harford's genius. He understood that football was not just about scoring goals. It was about breaking your opponent's will. If a defender was worried about getting hit in the face, he would not defend as well. Fear was a tool, and Harford used it better than anyone. Paul McGrath, the unbeatable wall Mick Harford, faced some of the best defenders in English football: Alan Hansen, Mark Lawrenson, Tony Adams. But when asked who was the toughest, Harford always gave the same answer: Paul McGrath. Without a shred of doubt, McGrath played for Manchester United and Aston Villa. He was a brilliant footballer, fast, strong, intelligent, but he was also ruthless. Harford said McGrath was not just a fantastic footballer. He was really tough. That combination made him almost impossible to beat. McGrath used every trick in the book. Harford remembered how McGrath would come in late and plant his boot on his ankle just before Harford scored a goal. It was deliberate. McGrath wanted to leave something on Harford, to remind him who was in control, to make him think twice next time. Harford called it leaving a bit on you. It was professional intimidation. Harford respected McGrath more than any other defender, but he also dreaded playing against him. McGrath never gave an inch. He never let Harford settle. Every single duel was a battle, and most of the time, McGrath won. For a man like Harford, who prided himself on his toughness, that must have been hard to accept, but it was the truth. Paul McGrath was the best. Kevin Moran, the United enforcer. Kevin Moran was part of a Manchester United defence that terrified strikers. Harford often grouped Moran with other brutal players like Brian Robson, Norman Whiteside, and Paul McGrath. Facing Moran was not just about facing one man, it was about facing an entire system of violence. Harford said that playing against these defenders was always tough. If you were not up for it, you would be blown away. That was not a figure of speech. It was a warning. If Harford was not at his absolute best, both physically and mentally, he would be destroyed. Moran and his teammates demanded total commitment. Anything less than 100% effort meant failure. The battles with Moran were made worse by the pitch at Kenilworth Road. Luton Town played on an artificial surface. It was one of the few plastic pitches in the English top flight. The surface was harder, faster, more unpredictable. Visiting defenders hated it. They were not used to it, and Harford used that to his advantage. He knew how to play on the plastic. He knew how to make his opponents uncomfortable. Moran had to fight not just against Harford, but against the pitch itself. It made every clash even more brutal. Alvin Martin, West Ham's brawler. Alvin Martin and his defensive partner Tony Gale formed one of the toughest centre-back pairings in the division. Harford faced them many times during his years at Luton. Every match was a war. Every aerial duel was a fight. Every loose ball was a chance to inflict pain. Photos from their battles in the 1980s show the reality of what these matches were like. Harford and Martin locked together in mid-air, arms everywhere, elbows flying. No quarter given. This was not football as we know it today. This was pure physical carnage. Martin was a decorated defender. Strong, committed, uncompromising. He and Gale worked together to stop Harford. They would double up on him, pin him between them, kick him when the referee was not looking. It was relentless. Week after week, Harford had to go through the same punishment, and he never backed down. The West Ham clashes were not as famous as the battles with Manchester United or Arsenal, but they were just as important. They showed that Harford did not just face the elite defenders. He faced everyone, and he fought them all. Terry Fenwick and Alan MacDonald, the QPR Steel Wall Queen's Park Rangers, had one of the most physical defences in English football. Terry Fenwick and Alan MacDonald were at the heart of it. Harford listed them as one of the hardest pairings he ever faced, and there was a reason for that. QPR played on OmniTurf, another artificial surface. Just like at Luton, the plastic pitch made everything harder, faster, more painful. Fenwick was an interesting case. He openly hated playing on plastic. He said it ruined his chances with the England national team. His manager, Jim Smith, thought Fenwick played better on the artificial surface, but Fenwick disagreed. That frustration made him even more aggressive. He was already a tough defender, but when he was angry about the pitch, he became reckless. And Harford was the one who paid the price. Alan MacDonald was the late Northern Ireland international and QPR captain. He was another wall, another man who refused to be beaten. Photos show MacDonald and Harford locked in battle at Loftus Road, arms tangled, bodies colliding, neither man willing to give an inch. The QPR matches were unique because both teams played on artificial pitches. Harford knew how to use the surface. He had mastered it at Luton, but Fenwick and MacDonald were just as experienced. The result was brutal, high-speed collisions that would have been dangerous on grass. On plastic, they were even worse. These 6 players represent the reality of Mick Harford's career. He was not just a goal scorer. He was a warrior. Every match was a test of his courage, his strength, his willingness to suffer, and he passed that test again and again. But there was a cost. In later years, Harford spoke openly about his memory loss and his fears about dementia. He linked these problems directly to his career. He said he headed hundreds of balls a day. The repeated impact damaged his brain. The bravery that made him a legend also destroyed his health. Harford has become an advocate for men's health. He speaks about prostate cancer awareness. He talks about the long-term effects of heading the ball. He wants the next generation to avoid the mistakes of his era. That honesty is typical of Harford. He never hid from the truth. Not on the pitch, not off it. His legacy is complicated. He was a hero to Luton Town fans, a fighter, a man who never gave up. He took over as manager when the club faced a 30-point deduction in 2008. Most managers would have walked away. Harford stayed. He led the team through the worst crisis in its history. Then, in 2018, he returned as interim manager and won the League One title. His commitment to Luton never wavered, but his legacy is also a warning. The game he played was too violent, too dangerous, too willing to sacrifice players for entertainment. Harford paid the price. So did many others. The injuries, the trauma, the long-term damage. It was all part of the job, and nobody cared until it was too late. The rivalry with Allardyce defined everything wrong with the era. One moment of violence, one elbow, and a man's face was destroyed. But Harford got up. He went back. He kept fighting. That was what separated him from everyone else. Pain was temporary. Pride was forever. Harford refused to be beaten by any man. Not Allardyce, not Adams, not McGrath, not Moran, not Martin, not Fenwick or MacDonald. He stood against them all and survived. His career statistics tell part of the story. 582 appearances, 186 goals, 2 spells at Luton Town, time at Birmingham City, Derby County, Chelsea, Coventry City, Wimbledon, Sunderland. Every club got the same thing. Total commitment, unbreakable spirit, a willingness to do whatever it took to win. Harford was consistent, reliable, fearless. Those qualities made him valuable to every manager who worked with him. The partnership with Brian Stein at Luton was one of the most effective in Division 1. Stein had the pace and finesse. Harford had the power and presence. Together, they were unstoppable. Defenders could not mark both men. If they focused on Stein, Harford would dominate in the air. If they focused on Harford, Stein would run behind them. It was the perfect combination, and it brought Luton success during their best years. Harford also showed his quality at international level. He earned 2 caps for England. That might not sound like much, but in an era dominated by Gary Lineker and other world-class strikers, even getting close to the squad was an achievement. Harford was never going to be a regular for England. His style was too direct, too physical, too old-fashioned for the international game, but the fact that he was considered at all shows how highly rated he was domestically. The red card he received in the opening match of the 1987-88 season was typical of his career. Harford did not back down from anyone. If the referee sent him off, so be it. He would take the punishment and come back stronger. That attitude defined him. Rules were secondary to winning. Reputation was secondary to survival. The only thing that mattered was standing your ground and refusing to be intimidated. Mick Harford once said he was not hard, he was just brave. That statement defines his career. He put his head in where others would not. He took the punishment. He gave it back. He survived battles that would end careers today, and he did it all with a code of honour that demanded respect. The 6 players he hated, Sam Allardyce, Tony Adams, Paul McGrath, Kevin Moran, Alvin Martin, Terry Fenwick, and Alan MacDonald, were not just rivals. They were mirror images of Harford himself, tough, uncompromising, willing to do whatever it took to win. They hurt him, he hurt them, and in the end, they all survived. That was the era, that was the code. You did not need to like your opponent, you just needed to outlast him. Mick Harford outlasted them all. Retry.